country, bootlegging. The village of Ecorse lay on the water, 10 miles south of Detroit. For years, it had lived in the shadow of the city, without much in the way of money or work.
Some made their living by cutting ice in the wintertime for a Bovian Ice Company. Some people worked on farms.
When my dad was young and he lived in Ecorse, they had a hook mill down there on the creek. And he worked there for $1 a day, and that ain't very much money, I guess, you know.
But Prohibition changed all that. By 1920, the ban against liquor had been written into the American Constitution. It was the 18th Amendment, and on paper at least, it meant the whole country was dry. There was now a national market for smuggled liquor.
My uncle got my dad started. He said, hey, you can make more money if you go over to Canada, get a few cases of whiskey, bring them over here. You can clear yourself $50 on a case of whiskey. So if you carried even 2 cases across on your boat, in your rowboat, you made yourself $100 for that day. Well, that's good money. Ford was only paying $5 a day.
The business of America in the 20s was business, and the citizens of Michigan didn't miss their chance. Liquor began to flood across the border.
We could see the bootleggers coming down the river from up in the St. Clair Flats going downriver to Ecorse or places like that, and you could just hear it a roar, like an airplane roar. And then following them, maybe about, half mile behind would be the smaller boats, which were the Coast Guard. But nothing ever happened. We never saw anybody come close enough to catch them. I don't think they ever caught one.
Sometimes in the wintertime, there would be maybe caravans of 20, 30 cars going across at once. They'd load up all their load and all go across the ice and then across the island and then across the North Channel and divide up and go Detroit, Pontiac, all over. And they got through with it.
Canadian distilleries set up outlets right at the water's edge. They cooperated fully with the American bootleggers. For the town folk of Ecorse, life had never been quite this good.
My dad was the agent for Cincinnati Cream, so he used to get about $20,000 a month just from that.
And no taxes?
No.
Because nobody knew it.
If there was, I don't know.
There was a lot of that money rolling around them days. Oh, God, there was a lot of money. Let me give you an idea of what it is. Them days, them guys every guy you seen on the street carried a roll of bills big enough to choke an ox. They was the size of your fist. They always rolled it up and had a rubber band on it. You'd ask them for $1, they never have a $1 bill. Them guys didn't know what $1 was. It was always start at least from a $5 bill, you know, to 100. They didn't have no dollar bills them days. I don't believe anybody ever bought anything for $1 or $2 or that. You know what I mean? I can't believe this.
Bootlegging became, after the automobile, the second largest industry in the area. A new underground culture had been born, and the average citizen was being drawn in.
All during the Prohibition era, when I was a young man and growing up, the whole focus of the evening was to go someplace where you'd have a drink.
We met these 2 switchmen, and we went out a few times. So one day they said, would you girls care to go to a speakeasy? And I said, I would. So they drove us on 3rd and Selden. It was an apartment, and this fella, he knocked, on the door.
You would knock 3 times and ask for Joe or something like that, and that would just be so exciting. And so the peek hole in the front door, Joe would come and take a look at you all and then let you in.
There were places that had a peephole in the door. I really think in many cases it was cosmetic, that it made the people feel that they were getting more.
So we went through this dark, dark corridor, and I was really getting scared, I thought, well, what did we get into? So here, We turned to the left, and we saw light. And they had the speakeasy in a basement, and it was really beautiful.
Everybody wanted to get out of the house. They went to the Blind Pig, because that's where the entertainment was. I was a musician, and I found out that I could make real good money working in a Blind Pig, or a speakeasy, whatever you want to call it. And we would play loud, because the boat came in underneath the pier, and they would open up the hatch, and they would pass the cases of Canadian whiskey and pack them in the warehouse.
Prior to Prohibition, no decent woman ever went to a saloon. And, of course, that changed entirely with Prohibition and the speakeasy and the Blind Pig. Everybody went.
You know, everybody likes to do things they're not supposed to. The women started drinking, smoking, and going to Blind Pigs.
And, of course, the gestures of smoking, that was so sophisticated, and you loved all that.
You know, it used to be that the woman sat in the house and the old devil did what he wanted to do. But now, after Prohibition, the women started... I think it was great for women.
They scared me. These women, they weren't the submissive type that would, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. They were starting to chew you out, and they were starting to say things to you that were very, very, very discomforting, because you realize, oh, this is no easy mark. This gal has a mind of her own, and she is starting to chew a little bit.
One time I was sitting in Patty McGraw's, and all of a sudden they dumped me out the window, and the place was being raided.
We just go in with fire axes and smash the bar and everything up. And we used to even give them tickets to appear in court. We didn't bother locking them up, give them tickets. Disorderly conduct. They'd appear in court, and the judge would fine them $25, $30. And then our job was then to find out where they sprung up next, and then try and hit them again. Just keep harassing them.
I can remember, even as a child, Prohibition enforcement officers coming into a street, and we didn't quite understand it. We were children, but seeing beer or booze running in the streets. They had gone into a house and smashed it up, or engaged in tip-over raids without search warrants and the like. Smashing up their property, manhandling them, brought considerable opposition to Prohibition.
This is a part of 20,000 quarts of whiskeys now being destroyed under court order. Go to it, boys. Go on, my day.
You get wisecracks, shamed all that good liquor go to waste and stuff like that.
It didn't matter how many barrels were destroyed. There would always be more. About 10 million gallons of liquor were smuggled in each year. Still larger amounts were brewed inside the country. Years later, researchers would find to their surprise that Prohibition did cut down the level of drinking in the country. At the time, few noticed. It was the law's failures, its hypocrisies that were plain to see.
I'd go out with the photographers and watch these police break down the front door and start swinging at the mirrors and the glassware and the bottles and break everything up. And of course, one of the dividends and one of the fringe benefits of going on these raids was the fact that every bottle wasn't broken. And the police would sort of look the other way while we newspaper people would put a couple in our pockets and walk away with them. And of course there was this double standard. Everybody knew it was illegal, but everybody did it anyway.
Those who believed in Prohibition now had a choice: to watch as the law was ignored or crack down.
Prohibition was in. It was against the law to drink, and Henry Ford was strictly for the law. And he didn't want anyone to break the law on his property. No way.
By this time, the old Ford sociological department had become the service department.